another Ideas in Motion virtual roundtable. This is the Fitness Roundtable Part 5. Thank you for joining us today. My name is Cheyanne Clouse. I am second year, almost retired graduate assistant of fitness at the University of Mississippi.
Howdy, y'all. My name is Anna Taggart. I am the fitness director with Texas A&M Rec Sports.
If you guys wouldn't mind to start us off, go ahead and type in the chat who you are, what you do, and where you're coming from. We'd love to see who's on the call today. And then as we're doing that, I'm just going to go over a little bit of guidelines and introductions just to kind of get us all on the same page. We are recording this session and it will be posted to the Ideas in Motion webpage. To find it, all you'll have to do is type in Google NIRSA Ideas in Motion and you'll find it. When you came in, you all were muted. So if you would like to join us for a conversation, please just unmute yourself and feel free to jump in or ask a question. You can also utilize the chat box like you are doing to ask questions or drop in any comments. And then utilizing NIRSA Connect to further these conversations. So go ahead and posting questions on there. Sharing resources will be really helpful as we continue to navigate through what the rest of the summer looks like for everybody. Want to congratulate you all on finishing your spring semester. Most people are all wrapped up with that. But as we move into today, we just want to make sure that we're creating a respectful place for all of our attendees and recognizing that everyone's viewpoints and ideas are their own. We're all kind of at different institutions with different things going on in different states. And there's no one size fits all for what we might talk about today. We want to make sure that we're welcoming all ideas and understand that some of the conversations that we have today, we don't have all the answers to. We're just going to talk about brainstorming and kind of where we're at, knowing that we might have to change what we hear from someone based on our institution or our situation. So just to kind of give you a rundown of what we've covered in the past, we've done group fitness, virtual classes, music, platforms and methods, personal training, and then refunds of passes and sessions and fees. So if you're looking for that information, it's on our first roundtable. The second one, we talked about liability and accessibility, as well as engagement of our staff and our communities. On the third one, we talked about hiring, onboarding, and training, some special events, and continuing the virtual option that we had to come up with in light of going online. And then last week, we talked about reopening procedures. So a lot of what it looks like in the facility and some of those logistics. We talked about maintaining essential status. Today's conversations might dive into some of these past topics, and we did leave time at the end if you want to revisit any of these topics, because from our first roundtable to now, it's been like 50 days. So things might have changed. We might have come up with solutions or seen new problems. So we want to definitely have a chance to talk about that. But to start us off, Anna, you want to talk about reopening?
Yeah, so in preparing for this roundtable, Cheyanne and I really felt like reopening is something that's still a big and hot topic in regards to rec centers. I know personally that here in Texas, lots of things are starting to reopen, and the governor's made an announcement saying that gyms can reopen on May 18th. So I know our rec center is planning on that. But all states are different, all universities are different, and so we just wanted to open the floor again for questions or comments, thoughts on reopening, specifically into these topics. I know last week we kind of broke it down in each area, but overall, does anyone have any questions or things they want to post to the group about reopening and procedures? Feel free to type in the chat or turn on your mic.
Hey, Andrew here from the University of Houston. How y'all doing?
Hey, Andrew.
One thing that we were thinking about today is the barrier of coming into a class, and a lot of places don't really want to use shared equipment like mats. We don't know if we can sanitize them as much as we need to, and a lot of studios don't even use communal mats. But with people just coming from like in Houston, they can come from like an hour across town to go to a class, and then they show up and don't have a mat. I was wondering if anyone else is doing like a rental program, because we tend to have a good surplus of mats laying around. And the kind of spirit of not letting people use them is to avoid cross-contamination. But if we were doing a rental, that wouldn't really be issue. Cool.
It looks like Daniel's planning on taking everything like that offline. I know on our last roundtable, I can't remember exactly who brought this up. They talked about having a dirty area where you would utilize that and it would go offline until a staff member had the ability to like deep clean and sanitize it, and then it would come back online. So if that was a couple hours or even in the evening, everything got re-sanitized. That was one of the things. I don't remember exactly who brought that up.
Yeah, I'm not sure which person or what university was talking about that, but I really like that concept, and I know that's something we're thinking about for group fitness. We currently aren't going to be, even though we're reopening, we aren't going to be offering in-person classes just yet. But when we do, we still want to provide that mat to patrons. I think I'm kind of in the same boat as you. With people coming from far places or whatever to come to our classes, I hate making them show up and then be like, sorry, you don't have a mat. So that's my personal philosophy, but I think that having that dirty area type thing is a good way to compensate, to make sure that equipment can get cleaned off before the next use, and you know that it's cleaned well and with the right product.
I think Courtney brings up an interesting point, allowing people to bring their own equipment into the facility. I kind of can see both sides of that. Like for themselves, they might feel better about it because they know where it's been, what it's touched, and it's their own. But then on the other side, now they're bringing in additional things that could have some type of germs on it.
Yeah. So the reason that I'm asking is because the governor of Texas, as Anna said, we can reopen on the 18th, but if patrons are bringing in their own equipment, we're responsible for cleaning it. So that's why I'm asking if people are allowing people or patrons to bring in their own equipment, and then us having to be responsible for cleaning it, I think could be an additional kind of barrier for that. And that's why Andrew and I were talking about doing sort of like a rental process with our own mats.
I like the idea of the rental. Like, do you have enough mats to do that?
We do. So we have plenty of mats to do a rental kind of process, and we'll be reducing our class sizes significantly as well. But the thing that I was thinking about is kind of how would we store them to make sure that we're not storing them kind of one on top of another, because that's how we store our mats now. And then how would we kind of be able to have a system in place to know whose mat is whose. So like, are we going to do like a cubby system where you put your name and you slide your mat in and things like that. So just kind of exploring different options there.
Lots of comments in the chat. I think Alyssa had an interesting concept about rotating her mats. Are you talking about like per class, per day, in different studios, like on the fitness floor? If you want to elaborate on that a little bit.
Yeah, so we were talking about it more so for the group fitness side, since we only have one group fitness studio that's shared also as a multi-purpose room and an academic classroom for the dance and theater department at Belmont. So we have roughly about like 45 to 55 yoga mats to like be able to have our normal classes prior to all of this, but we're going to be cutting down our class size to about half. So if we do have more than one class in a day, we know we have essentially 2 sets. So once one set gets used, it would be like put in a dirty laundry basket essentially for staff to like deep clean, and then we still have a whole other set for the class to be able to use whenever that next class comes in. But in terms of like in the weight room, I'm not sure how we're gonna go about rotating out mats or anything like that.
Thanks.
Yeah, I'd see Gia mention a similar concept with masks and allowing employees to bring their own mask or providing them. I mean, even then it comes down to if it is like a cloth mask, how do you know that they washed it? You know, they laundered it properly or cleaned it properly beforehand too. But for some of that, I don't know if there's a way to control it.
Daniel asked a question about student staff. Do you want to elaborate a little bit on that? He was just curious about how we're planning on manning the rec centers if they open, considering maybe they don't have enough students to do it. What kind of methods are we thinking about doing? I know when pro staff will fill in any gaps. Yeah. I know that yesterday I had a brief call with our director and he mentioned like reopening and I was like, are we going to have to hire new students? Like, how does that work? Can we hire student employees right now? Abbreviated schedules, full-time staff. Yeah. Cool.
All right, Kyra asked the question, has anyone considered purchasing bulk mats and giving them to students? I think that's an awesome idea if you have the budget for it. And, you know, I guess my only thought is like, how would you plan to distribute them and make sure everyone gets one? And depending on, I know UCF is a very large school, just like Texas A&M too. So thinking about that, it's a great idea. I would just, yeah, I don't know, Kyra, do you have any plan in place for that?
I really love the idea of a mat rental as an alternative, but I was just thinking that if we can pull this off and be able to provide thousands of mats to students, then it might be a good way to encourage them to kind of keep to their own space and only utilize that particular piece. If they were to store it in their car or maybe utilize our lockers, maybe they just keep it at home and they continue to use our services remotely that we will probably be offering into whatever semester we're able to begin. It could just be a good incentive as well. So just kind of thinking outside of the box with that, and really excited that y'all are sharing your ideas. It's helpful.
Angie threw out the idea of potentially selling those mats.
That's true. Yeah.
Mike's question about the studio and the room need to be sanitized between classes. I think that those regulations are probably going to come from your state on how they're going to require fitness centers to operate in terms of like sanitary protocols. I know that in our state it has to be like, I read the one and it was full facility sanitation at the end of every night. I did not read a line specifically on group fitness studios. Cece looks like she's cleaning out the studio in between each class. I'm really interested in Kenny's question. So if you want to kind of talk about that, he asked if you're hearing from parents that students are being told they should not work in the rec center right now. All right, is that something that you're experiencing, Kenny?
Sorry, I had to unmute myself. Yeah, well, we don't even know if we're going to be opening, but once we start to talk, that internally we're having that conversation. After somebody uses an equipment, that we're going to have to clean the equipment. We're worried that we're going to start hearing back from parents saying, yeah, we don't want our students to be put into that situation, even if they're wearing masks or if they're wearing gloves or are they wearing a full gown to clean the equipment. So we're kind of scared that we're going to get that backlash also. But I didn't know if anybody else has opened or is about to open is hearing that from students also.
I think that's a great point. My grandpa feels that way about me working. But yeah, anyone have anything on that?
We've had mixed responses at Beaumont. A lot of the students that like live here and have roommates and don't really go home or haven't gone home, they're all like, yeah, we want to come in and work because they don't have anything going on. But a lot of the students, like early on when everything was happening and their parents were like, you need to come home, are kind of the ones that were like, yeah, you're not going to be going back until it's totally clear.
And how have you responded to that? Like, have you been able to mitigate any of those situations?
We're kind of still in a point where it's up to the student, kind of with how things were in the beginning. So if someone did not feel comfortable coming into work, we kind of figured out a way to get their shift covered and did not require them to. Our students, like health and safety is obviously the top priority. So we don't really want to ask them to do something that's uncomfortable for them. We did send out kind of like who's planning on returning, either if we happen to be able to open for summer, who would be interested in working, and if not, like who's interested in working in fall, depending on what our like operations will look like, since we still don't know here in Tennessee. We've like slowly started reopening, and I know that like gyms and whatnot are in like phase 3 or 4 of our reopening plan, and that's all contingent upon like if numbers stay down. So it'll be interesting if we even get to like come the start of fall.
Thanks for sharing.
Yeah.
So there's been some comments on phasing in, like, is your facility going to be students only, or students, faculty, staff, or are you allowing community members? Does anyone want to share what I'm sure everyone everywhere looks different, but thoughts on different phases on who is able to enter your facility?
So this is Anthony from University of Central Arkansas. We are about a month away from starting that first phase. About 2 weeks ago, the state allowed all gyms and fitness facilities to open up. So in June, we are going to allow the on-campus students, which are primarily the international students that cannot go home for various reasons. So we're going to do that. We'll have a month to see what the regular gyms around the state have done. And then after that, in July, we'll then allow the employees of the university to come in.
Do you have community memberships at your university, Anthony?
No, we don't. Now, obviously, you can do guests, which we're not going to do until further notice. And, spouses of students and employees can buy memberships. But once again, we are not even allowing that until we start the true semester.
Gotcha. What have you done? I have a lot of questions about this. Sorry. What have you done with those memberships? Are they paused? Are they suspended? Did they get refunds?
No, they did not get refunds. Let's just go with that. Not even paused. From there, we're a little different. So we have a fee, like the facility fee for our department fee for students that get charged with tuition, and then the employees. It's cannot think of the right word right now, but if you're an employee, it's part of your benefit package. That's what it is.
I was just kind of thinking now, how are we going to justify to people who are paying a membership that like you're not allowed to come in? Like what are the things that people are telling them? Are we concerned about losing those memberships to other gyms that are going to allow them to come in droves?
And this is of course a learn as you go along. So like this group of students that are mainly international, our president told us that their fee is going to be waived for this first phase to see how this goes. And once again, the employees are not charged a fee for them to be a member, so we don't have to worry about them.
Joe, I just put your first and last name together. I'm so sorry. Trying to read quickly. Joe, it looks like you're not allowing people, like memberships, to enter. You're going to do it in phases with your students and faculty and staff initially. What are some things that you guys are going to use to justify that? Have you paused memberships? Kind of what does that look like for you? If you're on here and able to talk.
Yeah, sorry, I had to get out of the chat window. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay. Yeah, I mean, we're a small institution, so Texas A&M Galveston, we've about 2,000-ish students. We technically have community memberships available, but we don't really advertise them much, and so we don't have a lot of demand there typically. Our guest passes were usually used by community members for basketball and pickup game situations, which we're probably not going to allow to have happen. So we figure there's probably no real point in allowing guest passes. And we have fairly minimal faculty staff. I'd say maybe in the 25 to 30 range for that. And so we just figured initially we'll kind of phase in, allow students, faculty and staff initially, and then kind of see how that goes. Go from there.
Nice. Thank you.
So in regards to folks who are having limited capacity, maybe in your weight rooms or your fitness classes or your facility or your pools, what type of reservation system are you all using? Are you having people sign up in advance, or different ideas on that?
I know for us, we always encourage, not required, signups before class. So we'll just continue to do that, and we use IM Leagues for ours.
Sorry, my dog is drinking his water very loud. Yeah, Fusion Go. Fusion seems like a popular.
So when Anna and I were initially planning this call the other day, one of the things we talked about was what does programming look like when we reopen? So less of like logistics, but what are we going to offer? Like, are we going to come out and offer all of our classes, or are we not offering TRX because we have to touch the straps? Are we only offering classes like dance classes where you don't have to touch equipment? Does everyone have to have a spray bottle with them? Are you doing, like, is your hiring, training, and onboarding looking different for your staff? Does anyone have any thoughts about like programming in terms of reopening?
We won't be offering personal training in the time being, just because it's a more intimate type of offering. For group exercise, I think that we'll probably hold off on that as well. I do agree with you that if we could offer something that can be spaced out and we could mark the floor with 6 feet apart with blue tape or something, that could be something that we do offer, but it would be equipmentless programming only. In terms of special events, if we could utilize a field of some sort that's open space, that might be a good way to engage students while meeting those social guidelines, and still be creative with our program offerings in the space that we're using. But things like spin probably won't be happening just because of the equipment that's involved with that.
Kyra, I would love to, like, for the sake of dialogue, ask you a question about why you're not offering personal training. And so I want to explain to you my mindset, and then hopefully you can provide me with your perspective as I'm still trying to learn all of these things.
Love that. Hit me.
In my mind, personal training seems like a good option because it's only one person with one other person, and you're limiting the number of people that you're coming in contact with. Whereas like group fitness is 10 people, obviously we're limiting the class, but there's more people that were around more people. So can you kind of talk to me about where your mind is with that? And feel free, anyone else jump in on this too.
Sure. The main reason that we probably won't be offering personal training is because our PT clients work with our PTs usually on the basketball court. And the way that things are looking for us is we're actually going to have equipment, cardio equipment, move to the basketball court. So we won't have our quote unquote designated space for PTs to work with their clients. Now, it is very common for the PTs and their clients to move on to the weight floor to do the workout itself. But because of the high traffic that we're experiencing at UCF, we don't think that it's a good idea for two people to be in a close space, let's say on a squat rack, when there's other people that are probably wanting to utilize that piece of equipment.
Yeah, thank you.
If that makes sense. Yeah.
I see a couple people mentioned outdoor classes. For those of you who are maybe in the summer places that are very warm, like Texas and Arizona and things like that, how are you all handling those outdoor classes? Because I know that's something we definitely are looking into, but knowing what space would be best and conducive and for the right activities and things like that. I'm interested in hearing what folks' thoughts are around outdoor classes.
Well, for us, I think they're going to be huge. So we have a piece of equipment. It's by Move Strong out at our outdoor sports complex that we already host outdoor classes on, just in the evening, like right before the sun goes down, as Carrie's talking about, kind of moving those to the morning or the evening to try to hit those cooler times. But for us, currently, that piece of equipment is actually offline. So we just have to do it in the space next to it. But when that does come back online, it usually gets really hot to touch. So our classes on that are usually 5:30 or later in the evening.
Megan, you said you're having classes outside. What is that going to look like for you all? Megan Ridley.
Hey, so we're looking at doing our classes out on our intramural field and also possibly out on our main lawn. I'm in with student development at my college, and the main lawn gets a lot of traffic. So we're going to try to section off a part of that to do maybe early morning classes, like a 7 a.m. class, and then maybe a 5 p.m. class. Just depending, I know we won't be able to play flag football probably in the fall. So I'm thinking about other ways to utilize our intramural field. And we were talking about doing some type of group fitness class out there.
Awesome, thanks.
Jade brought up the point of, that's exactly what I was going to say, Carrie, the CDC group size and recommendations. Our state has put out and city have put out some really good guidelines around outdoor recreation, because we have some parks here and then a lot of field space. So we would follow those. Currently, our size is limited to 20 people on those fields, maintaining 6 feet. So we just have to ensure that that was a thing. I know that some of the studio gyms in our town have actually put taped boxes on the floor that people have to stay within. So that's pretty interesting.
What are folks doing in regards to hire training and onboarding staff? I know this was a topic we talked about last week, but as we move forward into the summer, are people thinking about what they're going to be doing maybe for their training courses? If you have a training course for personal training or group fitness in the fall, what ideas do you have that you're looking at to get creative with that?
At Belmont, for our group fitness instructor training program, we already kind of upload everything onto Blackboard.
Anybody for group fitness have any ideas for training? I know we are working on, we usually do our in-person fitness instructor training in the spring, which was put off due to everything going on. So we're now working on virtual options for the summer, and then in the fall as well. But I'd love to hear what other people are doing for group fitness specifically.
Last week we did a virtual audition for one of our instructors, and we have another one of those today. And then I think we're going to continue to do some work through probably Blackboard and hopefully have a virtual training in the future.
Yeah, we have our auditions set up too for next week.
It honestly went pretty well. Like, we got good at the sound sharing, and then we still had the ability to give feedback. What we found that was hard was they couldn't see us as well. So like to cue specifically to us was a little bit more difficult.
Yeah. I see you asked about microphones and headset sharing. I know we use, we have like 2 mics for every studio. The one, obviously we're looking at cleaning procedures for the mic, but then also purchasing the windscreens or the mic fuzzies or whatever you want to call them, making sure like every individual instructor has their own mic belt and mic fuzzy or something like that. I know some gyms require every instructor to have their own headset, but for students, if we did that, we'd have to purchase probably the headsets for the instructors.
Bring your own fuzzy. Yeah. So Kyra, I can answer like specifically for us about that. We are graduating out a couple instructors, and like hopefully by the fall we're able to have our student staff teach virtual group fitness classes. Right now we're not, but hopefully by then we will be. And so we started our prep course and they audition at the end of their prep course. So for us, it was easy to use the same terminology because that was always the language that we used. And the audition does not guarantee their employment. We have used that language since the beginning of our process as well. They still have to go through like the full interview process with our department. This is just to see their group fitness skills at the end of our prep course.
Yeah, and that's even a similar for us too. We don't have the ability to hire right now, like to do the onboarding and stuff in I-9s and all of that for payroll. So we're trying to expedite the process by getting them on auditioned and then potentially doing training this summer and then hiring in August. But we usually charge for the training when it's in person. And so now we're offering it for free. So that's kind of the incentive that we're putting out there for training.
What a great segue.
Pricing. And then Gia, when it comes to Zoom sound, there is a way to get it to sound good. You can actually go into, if you have the instructor share their screen and go into the advanced sound settings and share screen sound, that will share the music that they're playing in their device. You just have to make sure that the sound volume in the device they're using isn't too loud, because then you won't be able to hear their voice. So we usually have our instructors do a test run before they teach to see how it sounds and with their voice. Obviously, Bluetooth headphones project the best when it comes to teaching in your voice, but if they don't have that, then they just will have to turn their music down a little bit. There are some directions on how to do that too online in YouTube, or like Zoom sound settings, things like that. But pricing is something that we wanted to talk about. So thinking about moving forward with virtual pricing, I know this is something we're tasked with now, getting ready for budget reviews and projections for what summer's gonna look like. does anyone have any thoughts yet on what they're doing, or maybe things already in place in regards to virtual pricing, especially maybe as we move to the fall semester and we're offering things in person and virtually? Does anyone have any ideas on how they would kind of package their pricing at this time?
This is one of the things that we've been talking about. So we have people pay for group fitness classes, and when we moved virtual, we kept them in like a private Facebook group, and they had to have been a pass holder to get into our classes. And so we've toyed with the idea of, like, in the summer, do we just go free for everyone? We do a lower amount of classes, but then when we come back to the fall, how do we charge them again for the same option that we just gave them for free over the summer? And is it still virtual? Do we have like a virtual passes only? Do we have a in-person classes only? Or do we have like a hybrid option?
So Celia, do you have the link to that podcast or anything? I'm interested to see that.
I can look for it. I have it on my computer. I just need to dig for it for a second.
Cool, thank you.
Mm-hmm.
So Cece, you're looking to hold virtual classes like forever now?
Yeah, so I think this is going to, for most of us, maybe that virtual is going to be forever, but we're looking at the model where we're not going to separate virtual anything from what we're already providing in person, because we feel that our profits will drastically decrease if we give people that option to just do virtual, because virtual is so much cheaper, right, than our in-person. So it's going to be an add-on rather than a separate thing that you can buy to our pass.
So Cece, will people have the option of, for example, if they don't want the virtual added on, like they'll have still just like the in-person pass too, and then if they want to add on the virtual, is that what you're
Correct. Yes. And we are still in the process of, Austin is a really high market for fitness, so we're in the process of comparing ourselves virtually to all the virtual, everybody that's already out there, plus the Austin market itself for corporate, and then universities alike across the country. So we're benchmarking all of that right now to determine what our prices look like, if we want to increase, decrease. And I think in terms of that, there may be even like this free period where we launch, so people can test out and try it, because everybody virtually is doing that. So I think it's still a work in progress.
How will they get access to these virtual options? So if they do the add-on, is there like a meeting password or something?
Yeah, that's a good question. We're discussing this with our IT and our communications team, because we want it to be with their UTEID password secure, right? We don't want, because with YouTube you can give out a password and it'll be locked to your playlist, but people can give out that password. So we're analyzing a few different entities, like Decast and things like that you can only access with your specific EID. More to come.
We look forward to hearing about it. That was a great start. Does anyone have anything to add or any questions about any of those things, or just continuing virtual options?
Does anyone have any pricing ideas already thought of in your head on what, if you're offering something over the summer, or if you're doing virtual this summer and in person, and does anyone have anything set up yet?
At Ole Miss, we've switched over to going to 2 pre-recorded classes twice a week versus 3 live Zoom classes. So just put in the chat, we did have a private group for our pass holders. What we found is that people didn't log on at our live time. They maybe went back and watched it at their own time, or who knows if they even watched it at all. And doing the live Zoom classes was sometimes a lot of work to have somebody sit on the chat, be able to answer, be sure everything's going. So that's really having at least 2 people at that live time. So we're just going to that pre-recorded option. We'll post them twice a week, and we're still doing an at-home workout post, but that's open to our general social media as well. So it's not just for that Facebook group. And we did switch that you don't have to have a pass now, but to join the group, we will cross-reference to see if it's an active faculty, staff, or student of the university. So we're not just going to let anybody join that group. One reason to have the private group, we did not have to do closed captioning on our videos if it's a private group versus if it's a public group, our university would require closed captioning on all of those recordings. So we didn't want to have to do that just yet as well. So that's kind of what we're planning right now through the summer, and then we'll reassess for the fall if we continue virtual or if we do some kind of hybrid.
Awesome. Thank you. Thank you, Cecilia, for sharing that podcast too.
Tess, I like your stuff on personal training. Is that something that you see continuing when you reopen, whenever that might be, allowing virtual to be a thing?
Yeah, so I kind of came up really quick for the current clients that we had. I gave them 3 options, basically wait until we reopen, TBD, and then I was trying to think of how to be fair with the sessions where we were still in the spring paying our students, and so I want to make sure we're still getting some income with it without, it's not the same as in person and there's not equipment, so I think that's something that we'll continue to do. At UL, we're a little old-fashioned. We can't take payments online. We're in the process of trying to get that with our university, so we literally can't take any new clients right now because they have to pay in person and we're not open. And so when we open back up, if that's an option, we'll probably continue with that pay structure. And we have a pretty good mix of the 3 options where some are electing to do that, and they all thought it seemed very fair. There weren't really any complaints, and so that's kind of the structure I think for the time being we'll continue with. But I don't even know when we'll be able to do in person and take new clients, just with all the assessment stuff. That's for later to figure out. So, but yeah, it's worked pretty well for us, and clients have said it seems pretty fair and reasonable for them.
How have your student trainers felt about the virtual training options?
Some were actually more hesitant than others. We have one who he has an older client who was a staff member. He's like, oh, he won't want to do virtual. And then they had one workout sent to them and they had so many questions. They actually ended up turning and doing the virtual sessions regularly and does, I think, 3 a week. And so it was interesting to kind of see that play out. I think the trainers are really hesitant. Most of our trainers also do group X, and we're just really hesitant about doing virtual. I think just it's something new and it's different, but I think once they got on and tried it, I told them that if they don't have access to be able to do live, some don't have great internet if they're not in a very populated area. And so that's something where we were just going to shift clients if needed to, but it's worked out pretty well so far, and they've appreciated the new experience for it. And some of them graduating, going off to fitness centers, it's something they might have to continue to do. So it's good to learn it now instead of at a new job.
Okay, thanks. Any other topics around like what virtual options are going to look like into the future once we resume in-person things?
I know, like, a question I had in regarding like maybe a special event. I'm not sure if anyone's thought about yet planning for August, and I think we brought it up on one of the other roundtables, but freshman welcome weeks or special events or things that y'all might do at the beginning to get the new students coming in acclimated to your program and facilities. Any ideas around that y'all have? I know we personally haven't even begun discussion on what that's going to look like on our end yet.
You're just trying to be prepared.
Yeah.
So Anna, can I throw out a question for this really quick?
Yeah, go ahead.
So Tori Lord with UNC Charlotte. I was just curious. We found out that our fall semester has already been bumped by 2 weeks, so we won't be starting until after Labor Day. So I was just wondering if anyone else is in the same boat and how they are planning on doing. We usually do a group fitness sampler to start off the year, week of welcome events, trainings, all of that good stuff. So I was just wondering if anyone else is in the same boat where all of that has gotten pushed back.
Jade said she's planning for regular, but not getting too tied to anything because it will change. She's preparing herself.
Yeah, I don't know if any other schools have made that executive decision yet. So I'm just looking to see if anyone else may be in the same boat.
We haven't gotten any solid news here at UNC Chapel Hill, but we actually heard the opposite. We heard that they're looking at moving the fall semester to earlier and starting early August and then ending before Thanksgiving. So again, that hasn't been decided, but I heard that the other day, which I thought was interesting, also since it seems to be the opposite of what you guys decided to do.
Interesting.
The other day at the University of Vermont, my name's Justina, they spoke about, you know, if students go home for Thanksgiving break, you know, do we want them to come back to campus because they could have been exposed at home? So, you know, I don't, as far as I know, we're opening on time, but they did mention, you know, we're considering, you know, what's the end of our semester look like and what are the requirements for a credit hour and could exams be taken at home?
It's an interesting thought. I didn't consider that. Devin looks to be making 3 plans, fully in person, fully online, and a hybrid mix. I feel like that's where a lot of us are probably living right now.
Yeah, I know here at Texas A&M, we've been told that students will return to campus, but it's going to be a mix of, you know, in person and online. But even planning for a hybrid mix, you know, look, I feel like is one of the most challenging to go forward with. So.
We'll kind of just move on to this last slide where this is a free-for-all, whatever you guys have on your mind that you want to talk about. Maybe you solved a problem to something that we proposed in the past, or you've learned something new since entering the virtual era.
No burning questions?
Hey, this is Devin from University of Richmond. To kind of speak on what Lindsay mentioned, and I feel like we've gotten so many emails, but I think one thing the University of Richmond is preparing for is kind of the second outbreak of COVID once the fall hits. So in winter, so I remember like one of the emails they were talking about potentially shortening the semester maybe by 2 weeks or so. I don't know if that means we would start sooner or at the same time or how that would work academically, but I know that's like something on their radar is trying to prepare for that kind of second wave when winter hits and people typically get sick at the end of the year.
Question in the chat about surveying their students to see what their thoughts were on virtual offerings provided this semester. Then another question about online training modules, and looking for recommendations for how to build those staff training courses, if anyone has any of those.
I know that Nathania, I know that Blackboard and Canvas are two that often universities use for academic classes. So looking into whatever program your university uses for academic classes, potentially you could get access to that for creating staff training content. But also Google Sites, or if you're going to use Google or Office 365, you know, those are sometimes also helpful for creating training content.
Anything else on your mind, everyone?
I'm excited to see what y'all's surveys say. Hopefully y'all can share at the next roundtable.
Justina's looking for anyone with Les Mills. Samantha is interested in info on teaching fitness classes with masks on or having participants using masks. Any thoughts around this?
This is Anthony from Central Arkansas again. So I'll touch on the mask. Our Department of Health stated that for fitness and gyms, all participants and workers have to wear masks, except when conducting a cardiovascular exercise. They basically came out and just said that it'll be a lot easier for you to, not faint or something like that if you take the mask off. So we went with what the Department of Health suggested.
I think there's going to be more information coming out. At least I'm hopeful on masks for exercise, because I have heard through the grapevine some cases of people passing out already due to those requirements. So I have a feeling that we will hear more in that area.
There was an article I found. I was looking at Hong Kong with their lower rates, and they were opening up gyms and being a little stricter. I can see if I can find it, but one doctor, I believe a physician, recommended if people did have respiratory or lung issues, talking to their physician or their doctor or healthcare provider first, because it could create more issues with their breathing. And so that was kind of a perspective I didn't think of from that end. But for people that wouldn't think of that, but just being careful, and especially not allowing the N95 because they restrict so much of the breathing, and saving them for healthcare as well too.
I posted earlier, I went to a webinar in Shanghai last week, and they opened their gyms a month after closure, and it's 4 months later and they're still wearing masks to teach and to take classes. It's a requirement, as well as like this travel tracking log, like you can't have traveled within 2 weeks when you attend a class, and they do temp checks for classes. The one thing that I think, you have to take your mask off to drink water. You have to take there's things that I'm not sure if we'll be able to work around keeping a mask on the entire time.
Yeah, I know. I walked up the stairs with one the other day and got out of breath and was like, this is so uncomfortable. So kind of crazy.
I sprint through Walmart because I'm like, I gotta get it off my face, get back to my car. It makes me very claustrophobic, so I can't imagine teaching with it either. Courtney's asking about retraining staff in CPR and hands only. I know last roundtable, Jade was a big fan of hands only CPR.
Yeah, so for hands-only CPR, depending on what your certifying entity is,
it should have been included like in their certification. So for the American Red Cross, it's basically just the understanding that if they do not want to provide those mouth-to-mouth resuscitations, they don't have to, and they just go through CPR cycles without the breaths.
How does that affect their recertification? So like if they were certified in full CPR, can we recertify them in hands only? And like, what does that look like? Do you know?
Yeah, that's a good question. So as far as I know, it doesn't affect their actual certification because it's not like a separate certification. It's basically just the understanding that if you have the American Red Cross cert, you can either choose to do hands only or you can choose to do the full cycles of CPR. It's really just up to personal preference, but it's not necessarily a separate certification. It's just helping your students understand that they just don't do those rescue breaths and then do CPR as they normally would.
Cool. There are a lot of awesome things going on in the chat, so feel free to continue doing that. If you guys want to drop your emails in there to continue to connect with each other, also feel free to do that. On your screen is the contact information for myself and for Anna, so if you guys have any questions or anything, feel free to reach out to us. If you have any potential topics or discussions you'd like to talk about on our next roundtable, please feel free to email us those as well. We're probably looking to do one more in May, right? This is May. Yeah, one more in May. So maybe like 10-ish days from now, something along those lines. So be on the lookout for that. And then we'll just let everyone have a couple more minutes in the chat before we close out. But feel free to jump in, ask any questions, but that's all that we have for you all today. So thanks for joining us. We hope everyone's doing well, staying healthy.
Happy end of the semester. I feel like most people are wrapping up their spring semester.
Oh, I got my grades yesterday. I officially have a master's degree. I'm pumped. All the chat and this roundtable will be available on the NIRSA Connect or the NIRSA Virtual Roundtables page. Thanks, Lindsay. Anna, your house is loud today.
Oh, I live by a train.
The dog, the train.
Is that the College Station train?
That is the College Station train. Yep, Tori, you know it.
Sure do.
Does it come by like every day?
It comes by a lot. I'm used to it. I'm used to it.
Joe is familiar with that train, he says.
Yeah, congrats to everybody graduating. If there's, I'm sure there's other GAs on the call too. Mm-hmm. And Cheyanne and students in general.
We made it. Woo. All right. Well, thank you again, everyone, and we'll see you next time. Be on the lookout for our next roundtable. Happy Tuesday.
Woo.